Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme sound. This is the Northern Ireland.
Okay. Good afternoon, members. Welcome to this afternoon's meeting of the Northern Ireland Assembly Public Accounts Committee. We have quorum and we are now in public session. Can I just advise members that mobile phones must be set to airplane mode or turned off. It's not sufficient to put mobiles on silent mode as they continue to interfere with the Assembly recording. The session is being recorded in video and audio and can be accessed live via online streaming either the Assembly website or Democracy Live. Move then to agenda item 1, which is apologies. I have received apologies from Mr Hilditch and Mr Irwin. Any others? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 2 then, minutes of the 2nd of December are in your packet, pages 8 to 14. Are members content with those minutes, and do I have your permission to sign them as being accurate? Agreed? Agreed. Okay. Okay, agenda item 3 then is the declaration of members' interest. Do any members have any declarations they wish to make this afternoon? Okay, thank you. Members, I just should point out that you may wish to declare this agenda item 9, updated issues paper from last week's evidence session. Dr Brown and Ms Long reads closing the gap inquiry. So I will declare an interest as a Governor at the Girls Model Belfast and Edenbrook Primary School. Mr Beggs.
Declaring interest as a committee member of Horizon Sure Start and of Rodensvale School, a Governor of Rodensvale School.
Chairman of New School in Nigeria preschool through the medium of Irish.
Mr Muir.
Member of the Board of Governors of Priory Integrated College in Hollywood.
Okay. Any of our members joining us remotely, any declarations around education to make? Okay. Agenda item 4 then, matters arising. Any members, any matters arising? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 5. We're joined this afternoon by Mr Kieran Donnelly, CB, the Comptroller and Auditor General, Mr Rodney Allen, the Chief Operating Officer, and Mr Roger McCants. Also joining us remotely this time, Mr Kyle Bingham, Assembly Sport Officer, all from the Northern Ireland Audit Office. You're all very welcome, gentlemen. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Members, I refer to correspondence, page 18 of your pack, dated the 1st of December, from the Audit Committee regarding a report on draft budgets 2022 to 2025. At its meeting on the 30th of November 2021, the Audit Committee agreed that the draft budget presented in respect to the Northern Ireland Audit Office is appropriate and should be included in the Executive's draft budget for the period 22 to 25. The report has been published on the Committee's web page. The link to the view and the report on the draft budgets for 2022 to 2025 is in the correspondence. Are members content to note? Agreed?
Agreed.
Members, I refer to correspondence pages 19 and 20 of your pack dated the 3rd of December from Clerking and Member Support Office regarding Members' Development Course of Deaf Awareness. 2 sessions are being facilitated by the RNAI. They will last 2 hours via Zoom on Friday the 17th of December at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and Friday the 21st of January 22, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. again. Places are primarily for members, but party staff can be accommodated also. Members, this correspondence is purely for your interest and your offices in terms of your staff. You content?
Content.
Okay, the details are in your correspondence also. I refer to correspondence in page 21 of your pack, dated the 1st of December, from Stephen Agnew, Head of Renewable NI, regarding their latest report entitled Powering a Green Recovery. I received that last week and forwarded it on to the clerk for distribution. Members content to note?
Agreed.
Members refer to correspondence in your table pack, pages 6 to 7, from the 7th of December, from Colin Boyle, the Accounting Officer and Permanent Secretary, Department of Finance, regarding the procurement practices for schools. Mr Boyle refers to his attendance at the committee meeting on the 25th of November 2021 and has followed up on the issue regarding CPD and how do companies get on the list question, I think I put to him, and the procurement practice for schools. The correspondence outlines the Northern Ireland Executive Policy, which is contained in the recently published document PPN 04/21 Procurement Control Limits. The policy is effective for procurements over £5,000. For any purchases below £5,000, departments and their sponsored bodies are asked to demonstrate the value for money has been secured, which can be achieved by evidence of simple price checks. Any members, any comments on that? Well, my view would be, I thank Mr Boyle for his correspondence, but there still is a list. I mean, my point was at the meeting that there is a list, and how do you get on the list? So unless I'm wrong, there still is a list. Sorry?
That's about the application.
Yeah. So, and the other point I would make is that in terms of when we look at the comments were made by the Chief Executive of Sport NI and the amount of money that she can sign off on without recourse to her board a couple of weeks ago. £5,000 to me. I mean, I am aware of from my own constituency work and whatever. Schools continually getting into difficulty with the EA when they're going out and they get money. Say they get money, for example, from the Department of Communities, and then they go out to try and get the work completed on site. There can be difficulties, and I've witnessed it with 2 schools in my area. So you've read the correspondences received from Mr Boyle. Are members content with it? I take silence as agreement.
Can I come in there?
Yes,
sir?
Mr. Rowley.
We did a report on, I suppose, LMS in schools a few years ago. One of our recommended points was that there be a bit more discretion for schools at the lower end. The system did seem a little too bureaucratic.
Yes.
So we'll be looking at procurement again. So I think there are issues in there about how limits are set and what's the balance between central control and local autonomy.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, in the letter it talks about value for money, and I've never been convinced that the CPD actually provides value for money. I've never been convinced of any answers when questions have been put to people around that very issue, Mr Beggs.
In the past year, I remember being contacted by a frustrated school who had been quoted about half the price from what they ended up paying to get some classrooms painted.
But they weren't on the list?
No, they weren't on the list, that's right. And secondly, there also was a recent problem in the past year when work was being required to be carried out, and there were no contractors available, and it even down to there was a shortage of staff to supervise any work. So there's been major problems because of the administration system that's in there, and certainly the need for improvement.
Mm-hmm. I think that's right, and I mean, your contribution is helpful, Mr. Donnelly, and I think that everybody in the committee would be keen that, you know, the point that Mr. Beggs just made is similar to that my own around these issues. If you're not on the list, then it cannot be as competitive as it should or could be. If the list is a closed, limited list, it stands a sense.
It's something I think we'll have to get back to. But I certainly know in the past there were restricted lists for certain things. could be a little more open. So, but we're not totally up to date on it. We need to get back into that space.
Equally, we don't want to get to the point, I think, where, in terms of contractors for issues like maintenance for the housing executive, where the competitiveness there drives down the quotes contracts so much that people then, when they actually start to do the work, can't any longer pay for it. And we've seen so many examples in my own area. One year, 3 contractors having to withdraw from contracts with the executive housing executive for that very, very reason. So I think we have to get a balance in all of these things in terms of public procurement. Okay, thank you. Members, we're going to go into closed session for the next agenda item, the briefing session prior to the hearing evidence from Dr. Jane Brady, the head of the Northern Ireland Civil Service. So can I just then...
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber Programme Sound. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed.
Can you confirm we're now in public session? Okay, order. Okay, members. Agenda item 9 then is Dr. Jane Brady, Head of the Northern Ireland Civil Service. This evidence session, pages 53 to 54 of your pack. And at this stage, as Chair of the Committee, I'd like to welcome Dr. Jane Brady, Head of the Northern Ireland Civil Service, to the meeting, and remotely Mr. Bill Pawley, Department of Finance, Jill Min, Head of Civil Service HR, and Brad Hannon, the Strategic Investment Board, to the meeting. We are joined by Mr. Kieran Donnelly, the CB, the Comptroller and Auditor General, Mr. Rodney Allen, Mr. Roger McCants as well. Members, additional papers for the public session include biography of Dr. Brady, page 53, biography of Jill Min at page 54. So, Dr. Brady, good afternoon, and thank you very much for agreeing to meet with us and attend in person today. We have much to discuss with you around the issues of leadership, culture, joined-up government, transformation and digitisation and skills. But first, I'd like you to make an opening statement, if you will, and then we'll take questions from members. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you for inviting me to be here with the committee. I'm still under my first 100 days, but just by a day or so, so great that I can make it during that period. As you may be aware, this is my third committee session since I've taken up the post. I've attended the Executive Offices Committee and also the Finance Committee in the last month. And I think, and I'm sure we will all agree, that it's clear that there are critical areas where we can work together. And perhaps most prominent is the work to strengthen our civil service and to prepare it for the future. And I guess, making a statement, while I'm here today, I'm really keen to work in partnership with you in terms of doing that. And I really, my background in venture capital and finance understands the real value that scrutiny can bring, and challenge and constructive challenge. So just wanted to make that really clear, that I'm here to listen and to hear about the work that we in the service can do better, and to use this as I progress through my role as a board that I can come to and get that input. And for me, it's important to have a positive agenda, and I came into this role with a very positive perspective, and I positively want to move our services and our people forward, and that is the positive that I bring to this role and to the engagement I've had with my colleagues in the service and to partners elsewhere. And as you know, I'm both Secretary to the Executive, I'm Head of the Civil Service, and in this regard, we have a genuine opportunity to take a fresh look at how we do business. And you may have heard me say before, but I'm determined to bring new energies and new ideas and innovation to each of these crucial functions. And for me, it feels like we're just an extraordinary moment in history, and we have an opportunity. Decisions we make here now will determine how our communities rebuild during the pandemic. And although it can be a bit daunting, and certainly for me coming into a new role with many new colleagues, what I believe really is this moment of discontinuity, such as we're experiencing, it also provides a platform where we can decide to take a step change and to embrace those opportunities to improve our services and to improve our economy. You may be aware, but prior to taking up this post, I worked in engineering and in finance and in large multinationals and venture capital, and most recently I worked within Belfast City Council as Digital Innovation Commissioner. And it was during those last 20 months when I worked in that role in the public sector, my first entry from the private sector into the public sector, I really saw that the civil service was up for partnership and genuine partnership, but also that it was up for innovation and new ways of doing things, and up for a fundamental change in terms of delivery. And I know we all appreciate the resilience and determination and creativity that our civil servants demonstrated during that period to keep our services opening. And my children are at school, and all our arm's length bodies have provided those services, and the rollout of the vaccination programme and the booster programme as we're ongoing. So that gives me confidence and optimism that bridling in terms of those new ways of working and that agility, we can address many of the challenges ahead of us. The agenda I want to pursue will build on these strengths. It will learn from the new ways of working which we have developed during the pandemic, developing and enhancing our strengths. But at the same time, I am very conscious that we must also give serious attention to those areas where our performance has not always been what we or the public would wish. In particular, we must address the recommendations of this committee on civil service capability and capacity, and we simply need to act on the findings of the RHI inquiry report and the further PIC reports. I'm committed to doing this, but equally I do not want the process of growing and developing our civil service to be wholly defined by these things. And I guess change for me cannot come just through reacting to the past, it must also come through positive action to face the future and the opportunities ahead. We all want a modern, innovative civil service with diverse people and skills, one better equipped to meet the challenges of the future and to serve the executive and to serve our communities more effectively. And having met with a range of colleagues right across the system, it is clear to me there is a real and a very genuine appetite in the civil service for this. And indeed, we have started to deliver. We have reconstituted the Northern Ireland Civil Service Board, I know a recommendation in the PAC report, under revised terms of reference in order to create a refreshed mission to lead and to deliver change. I have commenced a process to recruit external non-executive members of that Northern Ireland Civil Service Board to offer independent expert advice in terms of commerciality, again, recommendations that were identified in the PAC report, and also challenge, specifically focusing on the critical areas where we need to improve. We have launched a competition for new permanent secretary roles with appointments planned for early new year. I'm very pleased that actually that process resulted in a record number of applications, both for internally and externally for those new roles, and we are during the process of appointment through that process. We're also developing schemes to increase diversity within the civil service, including graduate training programme, apprenticeship programmes, and including areas to change in diversity and also the age breakdown of our service. In addition, with the Civil Service Board, I am developing a strategic programme with ambitious service-wide objectives to strengthen our civil service and to propose prioritising a small number of areas where departments work together to deliver far-reaching improvements. This programme will develop around 4 themes. The first of those is around delivery. I guess for me this is the most important aspect, delivery for our executive, for this assembly, but also most importantly for the citizens of Northern Ireland, looking towards a COVID recovery plan, but also signalling in a small number of cross-cutting issues where we can maximise the opportunities provided by multi-year budgets and to think more strategically. And people in terms of capability and capacity is the second theme, and I know this is a priority for this committee. We want to strengthen our Northern Ireland Civil Service, we want to build new skills and capacity, increasing diversity, managing performance more effectively, while developing our talent and empowering our people to be more innovative. The third theme is innovation, and I make no apology for this as a former Innovation Commissioner and as an engineer. This is linked to people and also through the innovation way that we can look towards diversity within our workforce. Through my experiences in engineering and finance, I know the power of innovation and intelligent risk-taking. We need to be more innovative in our approaches. We need to use data and analytics more effectively in policy making. We need access to the best advice and information, and we need to be ready to seize the opportunities emerging in the modern, digitised and technology-centred world. And the last of those areas that we are focusing in terms of our transformation plan is in how we communicate and collaborate with our partners. I want to improve the way we communicate with our partners and stakeholders. I want co-production to be at the core of how we do business. I also want to do more internally to share good ideas and practices and to ensure that all of our people, no matter where they work, feel connected to the programme for government and the business of the executive. I want this to be a programme of positive, far-reaching improvement, one which builds on our strengths and addresses our shortcomings. I'm very pleased to say that the First Minister and Deputy First Minister are highly supportive of the goals I've identified, although they also fully recognise the challenges and difficulties inherent in a programme of work of this scale and ambition, and the need to ensure that the right resources are in place to deliver it. Something key to our success here will be partnerships. It is clear that when the civil service works in partnerships with others, it delivers very real benefits to our communities and supports the growth of our economy. Effective, inclusive partnerships gives us access to the best ideas and thinking out there and help us better connect with the communities we serve. As well as building new partnerships, we will also work to develop our place in the world as part of a global community and as an attractive place for investment. I will bring my experience of living and working in China, North America and Germany, combined with a background in securing investment cases, to amplify the opportunities with our international relations team in bringing strategic investment cases forward. And as I'm sure this committee will agree, there is very much to do. But I am very clear that our plans must be more than just another set of abstract, long-term ambitions which are never realised. I want us to be agile and responsive with continuous focus on delivery, both short-term, medium-term and, of course, those long-reaching objectives, and overcoming the challenges that we will encounter along the way. And this is new territory for all of us. We face major societal, economic and environmental challenges, but if we work together, we have a chance to make the coming decade about delivering better. That's why I look forward to working with this committee as we drive this programme forward. I am in no doubt about how challenging this will be, but if we look at what we have accomplished during the pandemic, I think it's clear we have very much reason to be optimistic. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. You've said in your presentation that your Secretary is the Executive Head of the Northern Ireland Civil Service. Can I ask you to expand on what your role is?
Of course, as Secretary to the Executive, I operate under the Executive Office under the direction and control of First Minister and Deputy First Minister. So part of my engagement with them has also been looking towards making sure that we have effective running of the Executive Office, and also engaging with ministerial contacts within that context in the running and operation of that Executive Office. Obviously, as head of the Northern Ireland Civil Service, my key role there is in terms of the leadership piece within those areas. And I guess if we look at the frameworks within the Civil Service, we have obviously the policy dimension is owned and controlled by ministers and, of course, the Executive. From an accounting officer perspective, our permanent secs obviously report into their ministers and they operate under their direction and control and are the accounting officers for those departments. And in my role, I am not an accounting officer. We have an accounting officer as permanent sec within the Executive Office, and my role is a leadership and governance of the overall piece of the...
So who is the accounting officer for the Northern Ireland Civil Service?
The accounting officer for the overall Northern Ireland Civil Service is within each department. So the accounting officer of the Department of Finance is the permanent sec of the Department of Finance. The accounting officer of the Executive Office is the permanent sec of the Executive Office. There's
no accounting officer for the Civil Service as a body. They're all accounting officers for their separate individual departments.
That is the way the structure of the legislative is in terms of that. I guess as an SRO, I have a role, of course, in terms of governance overall from a leadership perspective and for the systems and places. I have responsibility under the PAC for leadership of those aspects, but I have no accounting officer responsibility.
Okay, thanks for that. You will know that in our report on the capacity and capability within the civil service that we recommended that the Northern Ireland Civil Service, the head of the Northern Ireland Civil Service, should be amended so that it could be more like the Scottish and Welsh head of their respective civil services, and they would have greater authority and accountability over permanent secretaries. I mean, if I go back to the major capital projects evidence session in March 2020, where I put it to Mr. Sterling, who was then in your position, subsequently Sir David Sterling. You are now head of the civil service. You have heads of the various departments, but they are accounting officer in those departments. If there are issues in departments or across government, who's ultimately accountable? His response: I suppose the constitutional position is that the permanent secretary in each department is under direction and control of the particular minister there. People sometimes think that as head of the civil service I can tell other permanent secretaries what to do. Sadly, that's not the case. They are very much responsible to the minister. My point to him was then, with 3 years where we didn't have ministers, when there are no ministers, again, people thought I had some omnipotence, but sadly that was not true. Without being facetious, the important point is that there is a significant role of the Department of Finance in seeking to provide guidance to which all departments adhere whilst they do not have the powers of direction and control over the departments, we have a Northern Ireland Civil Service Board that seeks to manage the civil service. We're keen, and I'm pleased to hear what you're saying about the expansion of the Civil Service Board. That was a recommendation we made, that the power of accountability for the entirety of the civil service in Northern Ireland should reside with the head of the civil service, and we feel that's an opportunity missed. As a committee, I think I'm speaking for all colleagues when I say that. What's your view on that?
Those are obviously policy decisions in terms of that. I mean, I'm really clear, coming from a governance background, looking to understand what constitutional realities that I operate in, and policy decisions are the direction of ministers and the executive, and it's not my view. I advise, obviously, on policy, but it's not my view to make, or my role to make decisions in terms of policy roles. Each department, as it stands, operates under the control and direction of their minister, and that's clear, and they have, the Permanent Sec has an accounting officer role. Items which are significant or cross-cutting will come to the executive for an executive level direction as part of that. But I want to be clear, Chair, that I'm not abdicating my role as leadership in terms of the Northern Ireland Civil Service, and in fact that's the role that I came to deliver it. And whilst there are significant functions that are owned in terms of DOF, the Department of Finance, in terms of the actual policies and procedures, much of this will be in terms of delivering the culture and accountability, which the Northern Ireland Civil Service Board will have a role, and which I, as chair of that, will deliver. Okay,
you make mention of the word culture, and this is something which the committee has heard in evidence before. And we've had former permanent secretaries from departments here talking about culture. We've heard people talk about silos within the civil service. We don't believe as a committee that those silos should operate and that there should be that culture. Northern Ireland's a small place. There isn't enough, in our opinion, and in our reports, and the report we're currently considering will say the same thing. There isn't enough cross-cutting across departments. So therefore you're not able to drive those economies of scale and effectiveness which perhaps you would otherwise be able to do. Do you think not, this is not because you applied for a job, you didn't set the specification for the job, but do you think it's an opportunity missed in terms of your day-to-day job to rid this culture, if that culture exists, and we've heard it has and it does, and address the issues of this siloisation, if that indeed is a word?
So I guess I applied for this role not to be the head of anything, to be honest. I applied for this role because I saw positive appetite for change in the civil service, and to be honest, when I was in the private sector, which I was for 25 years, I used to look up the hill and say, how has this not all worked out? You know, why have we not solved this? And then the last 20 months when I worked, and I saw actually, and it was Department for the Economy, who were up for change and who were delivering grants and funding, but also who delivered fundamentally new and ambitious strategy called A Decade of Innovation and 10x Economy. But actually they partnered through that piece. So whilst I'm really clear of the legislative environment I'm coming into, and I was clear when I came in, I don't think that stops me having a really central role in terms of defining, breaking down those silos and building those cross-cutting objectives. In fact, that's the first thing I did, and I'll apologise in advance, but I didn't. My first thing wasn't actually looking at the PAC recommendations and report. My first thing was thinking, how do we get this system to work? And the first thing I said, of course, the Northern Ireland Civil Service Board is core. And in the first 5 weeks, we got some terms of reference which strengthened and called out those aspects. I said it's really key and important that we get some really strong, independent non-execs around this board to drive that forward. And that's really key, that we identify a small number of things that will make a very big impact that actually can be delivered cross-departmentally to drive that new culture and that new way of doing things. And we have developed a programme of activity which we're working with the next board and the executive in terms of defining. So actually, when I reflected, and that was maybe week 3, I reflected on the PAC report and all the information that lines up with in fact all of the aspects that you have defined in terms of that capability, capacity and the major projects piece. And part of me is how we build, I mean, breaking down silos isn't an end in itself. It's actually what is the outcome that we want to get in 10 years, and then what is the system level operations, the structural pieces and the cultural pieces that we need to embed to deliver the outcome, and the outcome is a better outcomes for our systems. So some of that is about actually having a strong core, and that's what I'm intent on building, a strong core with some very specific skills within that strong core, within innovation, within investment, which I talked about earlier. And then part of that is actually breaking down those silos through delivering cross-cutting programs and projects that we can all get behind. So it's very clear to me, even with or without them, and there's hard power and there's soft power, and much can be achieved with soft power, and there is obviously hard power in my role as well as part of that. So my objectives are to strengthen that central leadership perspective, to build those key capabilities and resources, both in terms of technology, innovation, contract management, investment, that we can have those as a central resource for the next board, but also that we can use those to deliver those big cross-cutting programmes that we know we need to deliver. You can't solve green growth in DAERA, it needs to be cross-cutting. You can't solve the economy. In the economy, it needs to involve schools and communities. You need to deliver the big things from society across many departments as well. So I am very committed to delivering on those ambitions and objectives, because actually that's where I see that we have the very significant opportunity in the next 10 years to deliver something different. And just to come back, Chair, on your perspective on culture, and I've made it my business on each Friday to go out and to meet members of the service and go out and of course it's restricted now with the recent guidelines. But actually, and I'm sure you in your roles have met some very brilliant civil servants throughout the piece. So there is, the civil servants I'm very proud to work alongside. Now, do we have the right culture to deliver what we need in the next 10 years and embrace risk and innovation? And I've talked to Kieran as well about how we need to create an environment where we can also allow us to take calculated risk-taking. And I think there is a new a need for renewal, to build new skills, and also to look towards what culture we need to deliver those opportunities for the next 10 years as well. So I'm up for that, and the civil service is up for that. And part of it will be bringing in diversity of thinking around different tables, bringing new and refreshed input into that centre, and understanding the areas that we need to focus to deliver and drive that change. Yeah.
I mean, we welcome in terms of the response to our MOR, and you did talk in an answer there about change and positive action, which is encouraging. But for us, a major issue is accountability or lack of accountability. And I think one of the things that we continue to be concerned about is the fact that there's no accounting officer for the head of the civil service. Now, that's something which this committee has highlighted before. As you can see, over a year and a half ago, not long after we started work after the suspension. If I could just put the scenario, I think it's particularly acute whenever we have suspension. And de facto, the permanent secretaries are ministers and travel around the country opening things and whatever, speaking at things. That's when accountability is particularly a problem, in my view. And I think I make the point again, it's an opportunity missed that the powers that reside with the head of the civil service, both in Scotland and Wales, were not extended to include the head of the civil service in Northern Ireland. Okay, I'll pause there and bring others in and maybe come back to you at the end. Mr. McHugh.
Thank you, Chair. I was just that's right. It's nice meeting with you again. So I met you in the Finance Committee as well, Jane. Just in relation to just a comment that you had made about institution ideas and that, and I know that you maybe are almost completing your 100 days, but how have you improved, say, recruitment policies since you've taken over? And how can we make sure that our civil service is representative of society as a whole, with opportunities for those, and in particular from an ethnic minority background?
Thank you, Mr. McHugh. And I think that's really important for us, because I see, we talked about culture and the fish rots from the head. So I see I have a big role in terms of setting the direction in terms of culture for the civil service, and what I do and where I put my light and tone is important. But equally, the civil service, being such a major employer, has a really strong role in terms of setting the direction of what we should be doing from employment elsewhere. And I also think in terms of trialling new developments as well as part of that. So we are working through a very comprehensive view of perspective. I guess a couple of things I'd like to identify as part of that is the recruitment for the permanent SEC recruitment process, which I have led, and we're just about to go into interviews of that next week. But again, wanting to make sure that we were using this to attract the best people and roles for those positions, be they external or internal. And we worked very much with our partners within Northern Ireland to actually promote and advertise that. And I guess what we've seen through that is a very diverse mix, both from a internal and external, and both from a gender background as well. So I guess promoting that positioning elsewhere. We also have led in terms of some apprenticeships programs for people with disabilities, and perhaps Jill can come in terms of those other aspects. An area which I'm specifically looking at is the role of those groups which are underrepresented, and also those which have been adversely impacted by the pandemic. And we have commissioned a piece of work with Department for Communities and Department for Economy, which has identified that the under-25s, women and people with disabilities are those most adversely impacted by the pandemic. And there is a very strong risk of further economic scarring for that sector if we do not take action to lead that. So we talked about those cross-cutting priorities that we're highlighting. That is one of them, is actually how we prevent those long-term economic issues and areas that we have. We also are looking, again, taking from youth and our partners, and interestingly, you may be aware of the Shared Skills programme, which we led with industry, where we went mostly to internationally look towards opportunities to invest in Northern Ireland and did a retraining programme. So we are trialling that actually from a civil service perspective, reskilling our young and our grads into roles that are defined, some of them in technology and data, but trialling that within 2 departments to see how we can find more innovative ways for bringing in skills and aspects as well as part of that. A key part of me, and I know it is in the PAC's reports as well, is how we build some of those key intelligent client skills as well, and have that diversity of professionalism. I am an engineer, and I wrote the business case with support for one of the digital pillar of the innovation for the Belfast Region City Deal, and I guess I was very much aware that within the service that we sometimes have to outsource review and consultancy of that. So I want the service to be strong and to have strong core technical roles and professional roles and commercial roles, so that we don't outsource our strategic thinking to other consultancy or arm's length bodies. There are very strong reasons to do that for peak demands and areas, but very much we need to build a strong civil service who has the professional skills, the technical skills to make those informed judgments in that place, but also then to be outward looking to see where the opportunities land so that we can capitalise them in where we get to. If you look at the age profile as well from where we are from a civil service perspective in the under-25s, we have a very significant job of work to do. I think we've got 243 in the under-25s perspective. Now that is very, very low, and we must do better, but that's increased by 100% since in the past 12 months. So there is programmes that are being delivered to do that. We're not there yet. We must do more and do harder. And actually, when we talk about transformation externally, we need to look internally in our resources as well. We cannot hope to change better outcomes for our citizens if we don't actually tackling getting a strong civil service and capability and capacity. But I'll maybe bring Jill in, who can give a more broader view of the actual programmes that are currently being run as well.
Yes, no problem. Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you. Yes, well, as Jane has said, there is a significant programme of work around this. The civil service has agreed a diversity and inclusion plan, but it has really focused, particularly around those who are furthest removed from the labour market, and also those areas in which we are underrepresented as a civil service. The committee will be aware that there was a period of time where we had an embargo on recruitment for nearly 2 years, and then also the long-standing practice of having internal promotion boards, and that obviously has an impact on how quickly you can change the makeup of a workforce. But most recently then, over recent times, we actually have externally recruited at, in terms of large volume competitions, at middle manager and really from AO grade up to and including AO1, AO2, SODP. So we have 5 live external competitions on the go at the minute, and that will significantly hopefully change our makeup, but also change our vacancy rate. And then, as Jane has mentioned, alongside that sort of move and a fundamental shift, if you like, a review of our recruitment policy to being open and external. So sort of one of the recommendations was about opening up the civil service, and that is very much what we're keen to do. But as well as that, then there are specific interventions, as Jane has talked about, an apprenticeship expansion scheme. We doubled the number of student placements and we want to continue to double those. We're working with DFC on the Job Start scheme, and that is for 16 to 24-year-olds with disabilities. We're implementing from January a guaranteed interview scheme, which is for those with disabilities. We've worked with universities and colleges to try to attract people to the civil service, young people, and we have a graduate trainee scheme launching in the spring. So a huge programme of work which we're starting to see the impact of, but as Jane says, much more work to do.
Just in relation and still on the same theme, according to the RHI inquiry in particular, one of the critical failures there was the absence of commercial awareness of the middle and senior management. In what way, have you attempted to address that particular issue in order to recruit within the civil service or to develop the skills for those within the civil service in relation to sort of commercial awareness?
Thank you, Mr McHugh, and we'll bring Jill in just to talk about specific programmes of training, but just to comment, that is probably one of my real priority focuses in terms of coming into the service. And we talked about the strengthening the core, and which is really central to my role, but I'm very struck by, if we want to make a step change from now to the next decade of where the opportunities lie, and we have everything in Northern Ireland that we can actually play for, I believe the fundamental building blocks to allow us to do that, we need to be able to take risk. And unless we are skilled in terms of those specific skill sets, commercial, technical, all those other areas, we will never be able to embrace that level of risk. So actually it's a fundamental piece to allow us to transform. So I talked about in that innovation, that strengthen the core. We've identified some number of strong, significant roles, both as a technology piece and data and investment officers, where we need to, we'll go through a recruitment process. I'm not saying that there will not be internal applications for that, but where we'll build that complement of core skill sets. And you talked as well earlier, Chair, about how we provide breaking down the silo mechanism. And for me, breaking down silos isn't an end in itself. It has to be done for a reason. So bringing those core skill sets internally, which actually will be used as a convening factor within services. We look towards the excellent green growth strategy that DAERA has developed, but it's cross-cutting in all aspects and in areas. So we need to deliver those strategic approaches, to have those core functions central, and we need to have expertise within the sector. So we are, and also within the Northern Ireland Civil Service Board, as we are identifying those, we're identifying reference panel with strong commercial skills in externally. But those appointment of those non-execs, it will not be a generic appointment. It will be an appointment to say, okay, for this programme of work, which will be 3 months, 6 months, we'll do a year programme, but it's a long-term objective. What type of skill sets do we need around us from a non-executive level that will support us, giving us the correct challenge in terms of doing that? So there's a variety of different levels. I feel very much it needs to be at the high-level strategic piece, and you can't just land people in it. And it needs to be in the context where I have First and Deputy First Minister sign off and Executive sign off of this is the direction of travel of building this strong and capable core, because actually that will set the direction and tone and culture change that we'll need. We also do have a programme of reskilling in terms of contract and professional skills, and I'm working with our permanent sex actually through their development plan, and some of them have already attended some programs that I've recommended to them in terms of increasing those skill sets as well. So at the permanent sec level, and we're working through how that filters down. But perhaps, Jill, you can comment on some of the other programmes that we have in terms of those professional reskilling and training environments.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. Well, in relation, further to the capacity and capability report, there was a recommendation that the civil service should develop a learning and development plan. While we did have a significant amount of the issues covered in the people strategy, if not all of them, we have developed on foot of the recommendation a specific learning and development plan. And at the minute we are working with departments to undertake a learning needs analysis, but specifically we have developed a number of new training programmes right across the civil service, and they are in relation to programme and project management skills, policy skills, commercial skills, digital skills, and financial management and public expenditure. And then I think your question was really, I suppose, in relation to recruitment as well. And there's still the ability, and increasingly so, the ability to recruit to individual, professional, technical or specialist posts. And again, that was one of the findings of both the RHI and the Northern Ireland Audit Office about not recruiting to the sort of general service role and taking on board those specialist roles. So that is very much the direction of travel, and moving away, if you like, from totally generalist type roles and having much more specialist roles, or at least job families within the general service, and looking at the specific criteria for the job, as opposed to sort of generic criteria or indeed Northern Ireland civil service competencies. So all of that is work underway.
And again, Jane, you'd actually alluded in your presentation to civil service being part of the global community. You talked about being in China and in America, an opportunity that I had representing the Land District Council as well. So I'd like to ask you just, how would you hope to achieve that involvement and commitment to and development of the role of, say, officers and that within the civil service and embracing the global community?
Thank you, Mr. McHugh. So the first piece of that for me is actually to say what is our core focus, what is our investment proposition. So rather than engaging without a rationale to engage, so we talked about identifying some key areas that we think are very transformative for the economy and for the society. So we're working through that process as we identify those areas. Particularly one of those is in green growth. There's other very significant areas in terms of the economy that we can deliver as well. And as we look towards the opportunities elsewhere, so at the moment we get through Barnet, a Barnet formula for those areas that are devolved to Northern Ireland. However, within even the UK budget, there are significant areas which are retained, and those are in innovation and research. And that was a particular aspect that I was involved prior to taking up that post, was actually how do we get investment for those areas that come from funding centrally, either from a UK or from a EU or international perspective. And just to give you a level of that magnitude, there is 20 billion spent per year in terms of innovation investment by UK government. That's totally retained. It's a competitive process. You bid for it. And that's changed from 14 billion 2 years ago. When the analysis was done at 14 billion, it estimated that Northern Ireland was missing out by the order of 250 million, if you just took us pro rata across that perspective. But to do that, you need to have investment cases. You can't just say, give us more money, because that's the nature of it. So in that convening in those areas is bringing together a small number of significant investment cases and saying, these are the areas that we need to invest in that will get us to a fundamentally different position in 10 years' time. And I'm taking a 10-year trajectory. So, for example, we need to reduce emissions from where we are now to 48% by 2030. That's what we need to be on the track to deliver towards those net zero carbon targets. To do that, we need a joined-up approach. I actually fundamentally believe that we can lead globally in terms of green growth and green technologies, because actually we have on our doorsteps, almost the Silicon Valley. We are in agriculture. We have those capabilities and skills, and we will need to solve those problems of moving towards net zero carbon. But those are global problems. And actually, you look towards what we did in engineering in Harland de Wolff and building a dry dock for a boat that had never been imagined. We have those engineering skills, those entrepreneurial skills. So actually, we have the opportunity to grow fundamentally new sectors and to be almost a renaissance in some of those areas beyond that. But we need a joined-up approach. It's problem meets solution. We need a joined-up approach to say, this is actually, I'm going to target 3 things next 10 years. What can we move the dial in? Then what is the investment case? And then how do we fund it? And there is a funding piece from UK government. It's levelling up, and it's called, and I've had much engagement with my counterparts in UKG, Andy Haldane, the former economist, Bank of England, is leading that paper, so engaging to say we have a very positive, proactive proposition we can bring. There's also the Shared Ireland funding as well, north-south, and also there's opportunities internationally. The US, one of our biggest investors in here in terms of our technology and innovation skills. So part of this mandate will be actually to say we have a strong proposition and engaging with strength and capability and making that not an ask for money, but an ask for investment and to give a return on investment that gets us to somewhere different. So that's very much in terms of that mandate of coalescing the next board. What are the 3 big projects and programmes that we can deliver? So in addition to identifying the role of a chief scientific advisor and a chief data officer, we need an investment officer who brings together those investment places on behalf of the Northern Ireland Civil Service Board and brings those together to deliver those. And so I am engaging east, west, north, south, and internationally as well, with making our case for those propositions.
And just finally, if I may, Chair, just one other question. I know that I alluded to this in the last time I met you in finance, that where we've had a directive now that employees should work from home where they can, and accepting that there are certain roles within the civil service where it requires face-to-face contact and the likes of the delivery of the service. But and I'm not alluding to those roles at all. But how can you be sure that employees are given the opportunity to work from home whenever they can? And I ask this question because there's a complaint that I've had from civil servants, maybe that they find it within their departments that maybe because of a manager or whatever that they haven't been given that opportunity. So is there anything that you can do there to ensure us that on that directive from Stormont that people should work from home where they can, that that's facilitated within the civil service?
Thank you. And just on reflection, first of all, our direction is taken from the executive, the same as every other employer in Northern Ireland. So we take and listen to the executive's mandate, and the message is, of course, to work from home. And I think, for me, you talked about encouraging diversity and different kind of further kind of engagement in terms of workforce into the service, and that gives us a real opportunity, I think, in terms of providing that more flexible mix of skills. But ultimately, for me, for all partners and the executive, is that actually we are delivering for our citizens. So it's the piece is where the model works correctly to deliver most effectively for our citizens, and that's what every department has engaged with as well in terms of that, and that's why there's different models that are across that. But of course there needs to be a consistency of approach in terms of doing that, and you mentioned before that some roles that have never worked from home, and that's consistent with that. So following discussion you had with me at the Finance Committee, I discussed with Jill in terms of how we ensure that we obviously do have feedback, and the policy direction is being led through Department of Finance in terms of that approach as well. So we can talk about actually how we're logistically rolling that out, but we're here just to listen and to get the feedback as well. And obviously the direction, and you talked about hard levers and soft levers, so the direction in terms of the leadership from a HR perspective is obviously with an MOU with myself and Department of Finance. So I do have a really key role to play in terms of that, and we are engaging to make sure that there is that consistency of approach. I appreciate as we're rolling out something new, and we've gone from one approach, we'd hope to go live with our hybrid ways of working at the start of January. Now that isn't going to be the case because we're following with the executive. So I appreciate that there may be a level of inconsistency as we get that out of it, but that's not a reason for us not to continue listening and to get that level of consistency. And that's, I guess, an obligation I will give you to make sure that we are delivering kind of a fair response to all parties. But Jill, maybe you want to come in terms
Sorry, Mr Muir is leaving at 4, and I think to be fair, I think you've answered the question. We're pushed for time because you're under time constraints, so if you don't mind, I think the question's been answered. Mr Muir?
Thank you very much, Chair. I appreciate it, and thank you for coming along. My question is really about major capital projects. There's a systemic problem within the civil service about the delivery of major capital projects on time and on budget, and the evidence is in the Audit Office report and the PAC inquiry about that, but also here now that there's capital money in this financial year which is unallocated because there wasn't sufficient bids from departments to spend it. So whilst we have a real challenge in terms of resource, that challenge isn't there in terms of capital, and we should be using every single penny of our capital money to invest in our communities. There is an issue with the departments; they're all legally constituted separately, but we need to be able to get over that, because what happens is that whatever good practice there is in one department, it's not permeating to others, and we're having this problem month on month, year on year, where capital monies aren't spent, projects are overrunning, they're not delivering on time, they're delayed. So what are you as the head of the civil service doing to try to address this? Because investing in infrastructure is a key power that the civil service and the executive can have, and I'm not convinced we're using it to our best advantage.
Thank you, Mr Muir. And yes, I reflected on the kind of the feedback from the report. For me, it is really fundamentally important because, you know, I think it's drains and cranes that I would have used. Those are the underpinning pieces that actually I talk about innovation, but unless you get the basics right, and the basics are infrastructure, and the basics is your capability and capacity, and I guess all the areas that the PAC has identified. And I think the PAC report reflected on, I guess, some of the skill sets, that professional skill sets in terms of programme management, but also those technical skill sets as well, and that's key for me for building that stronger core. I have got personally involved in terms of the investment strategy for Northern Ireland, and I know we have Brett, who's our SIB colleague here, as well as part of that, because I understand how fundamental that is in terms of the overall approach, and it talks towards what are those big investment propositions and how we're going to join those. So I'm looking towards that investment strategy, investment lead, to be very closely coupled into that strong core as part of working with the science and technology piece, that it isn't something that's an adjunct to this. So infrastructure shouldn't lie as a separate programme in itself. It's an enabler, very fundamentally, and it shouldn't lie actually in any one department either. It needs to have a joined-up approach. So I have actually spent a lot of time reviewing the investment strategy consultation, which we're hoping is going to go out very shortly, but to make sure that we're engaging. And I guess we talked about those funding opportunities, you know, the shared island, the levelling up. Some of those are very fundamentally infrastructure, but they're absolutely fundamental. So part of it is about getting the actual capability and capacities to make sure that we're that intelligent client when we're doing it, we're knowingly engaged, and part of it is joining up that overall strategy across the service, and it's core and centre to the pieces that I will be delivering and leading on, because that's will be the underpinning for the transformation piece. And actually, interestingly, that's capital money is easier to get than some revenue funding. So those are areas that actually we can, if we can bring up those big transformative projects and programmes, particularly in terms of some of the areas we talked about, green growth, those are areas I think where we can unlock additional funding elsewhere in the system if we have a very joined up approach. The programme management and the project management piece, you know, that we need absolutely to have those skill sets internally as well. And I kind of make no defence or apology for why we've overrun. Capital projects do overrun, and that's the nature of it. But we need to recognise where we are and actually to build a system that addresses those issues as well. I don't know whether Brett wants to come in terms of his experience. I've been working really closely with Brett and with his colleagues as well in terms of rolling out that investment strategy, engaging with our next board, and going through and reviewing those processes as well.
I think my issue really is, so each permanent secretary reports to a minister. But I'm not going to go through any specific examples, but there's myriad of them, okay? Within individual departments where projects have went wrong, have been over budget, they beyond their envisaged completion and all the rest of it. So that's happening within departments. And these are civil servants that are involved with that. Now, I totally agree with your comments at opening that there's many great civil servants, and I know many of them are good friends, and they've been doing fantastic work, just particularly in the context of COVID-19. But when these problems are occurring within departments, what power do you have to be able to say, look, we need to be sorting this out? Because it's the civil service that are accountable for this, and yet we're not seeing that reach in from the head of the civil service to say there's clearly problems here in terms of delivery of projects.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess we talked about the division in terms of accounting officer responsibility, which is defined, and that's within the remit that I deliver. If we look at the investment strategy, which is a capital investment strategy, a long-reaching investment strategy, that's also under the executive office as well through that remit, but it is departmentally led. So, and it's a fundamentally core strategic plan, in the best sense of the word strategic. Actually, it's meaningful for the next 10 years, but the next 40 years. So I have a role and mandate within that programme and focus, as it is in the executive office, and it is significantly cross-cutting. So that is the area where I'm focusing currently as part of that piece. That will go to consultation. That is, we've been through that. It's going to consultation. Will come in with the budget mandate as well. So, you know, we talk about, and of course there is obviously the skills required and the complement of skills which we're building. That's one specific item, the skills that we're going to build through the transformation programme, which I do have a core role on with DOF through our MOU, in terms of building those skills which will further enhance those programmes and projects. Within the next board, we will have a defined work plan, which will actually have key significant milestones, and we're moving it to a 3 month, 6 month, 12, so a normal 12-month cycle for plans and programmes and the key milestones that we will deliver it. But it can't be about managing 83 things in a COVID recovery plan. It needs to be about a critical few, so that we have strategic-led discussions. So the development of the investment strategy and those big milestones will be the bits that we will have to focus in, because it can't be just a status update report where we review checklists and tick boxes. It needs to be a proper strategically led. These are the few core things that we need to focus on. And I think in doing that, delivering that, you'll actually get that cultural and that transformation change, because you'll deliver the big substance pieces as well as addressing those new ways of working as well. I don't know whether Brett wants to come in as well.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. As Jane has said, there is a great deal of effort being put in to address the causes of the failures which this committee and the NIAO have identified in the past. And I think they can be described in 4 different ways. Firstly, to ensure that we get a realistic starting position, that we get good, high-quality business cases, because we can have the best delivery team, the best project managers in the world, but if the business case is unrealistic, then they're going to fail. So a great deal of effort has gone in, and we last spoke to you on the 5-case business case model. But there is more to do, I think, in terms of implementing reference class forecasting, which is a technique I described to you before, and also in ensuring that the assessors of business cases have as much information as the promoters of those business cases, and steps have been taken to do that. The second essential is that we have high quality project teams, and Jill has described to you the effort that's gone into improving the quality of project managers, improving their training, ensuring that SROs are properly qualified, have appropriate terms of reference and know what they're doing. And as Jill has said, a great deal of effort has gone into ensuring that the standard there have risen. The third element is good governance. And this is, I think, the point that was raised in the initial question about capital projects. And here there are proposals in the draft investment strategy which would improve the oversight and governance of the delivery of major capital projects, and they include appointing the NICS board as the programme board for the delivery of the investment strategy. Now, in order for that board and for the executive sitting above it to be effective, it's important that we have comprehensive, accurate, up-to-date information on the performance of individual projects. So a second proposal within the investment strategy is the implementation of data collection systems that will ensure that at any one time officials, ministers, the NICS board and the executive will know what is happening and can identify the early warning signs of problems and can react to those problems. Without having that data, then you are flying blind. The final area of work that we are undertaking is to identify and address the deficiencies in the multiple systems that are needed to deliver infrastructure. The NIO report identified 10 separate areas where projects were failing, and this included areas such as, the NIO report identified 10 separate causes of failures in projects. Now, those causes were pitched at a relatively high level and certainly weren't detailed enough to be able to identify the actions that are required to address those causes. What we really need to do is to identify the root causes, to identify the quantitative impact that those causes have and the underlying causes beneath them. So to give an example, planning was identified by the NIAO as being a major issue in about, I think, 20% of projects. But what the report didn't do and couldn't do at the time is to identify what the root causes of problems described as planning were. Was it because the planning application was inadequate? Was it because there weren't enough planners to deal with the number of applications being received? Was it because statutory consultees didn't reply on time? These are the sorts of questions that we need to ask, to investigate and to be able to answer if we're going to be in a position to make changes to the systems for the delivery of major capital projects and improve performance. So that's the work that's being commissioned by the Procurement Board and which is underway with the support of SIB at the moment. And I think if we take each of those elements and work in the way that we are doing to improve them, then we have a very good chance of improving the overall performance of the system for the delivery of major capital projects.
Okay, Mr. Muir.
Yeah, just want to obviously have to head on, but and thank you for taking me earlier, Chair. I just want to say thank you for the work that's been done, particularly around COVID-19. We're talking about bigger issues here, but we're still in the middle of a deadly pandemic, and I'm conscious that the exec has to meet again at 5 o'clock without considering the issue of COVID-19. So I think it's important for myself and probably from the rest of the committee to record appreciation for the work that's being done by civil servants and really extenuating circumstances. And that's not something I'm going to overlook, because we can talk about this, but we're also in the middle of a very challenging situation. So.
Thank you, Mr. Muir. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Beggs.
Again, Dr. Brady, thanks for your answer so far. One of the areas where improvement was needed is a specialist area of yours, which was transformation and digitisation. And in the past, we found that box ticking was happening. I mean, one department felt they'd achieved something because they put phishing fees online. The department collectively had not looked at the big issues that were going to benefit the most people. So my question is, do you have any plan to ensure that going forward there's the greatest leverage and benefit to the public purse and the public themselves in how the Northern Ireland Civil Service uses digitisation in the future? How are you going to ensure that that happens?
Thank you, Deputy Chair. And we talk about kind of that core capability piece, which you reference as core to my diversity, but actually the use of innovation and digital is the other leg to the stool that I bring to this. So I actually have a session before everyone starts in for their full day of work at 8 o'clock with some of the techie people around the service from all the different things you talk about, just in terms of brainstorming where we do that. But actually, core to that is, we saw what we did digitally, particularly the health service, of actually how it moved in the last 20 months for things you thought wouldn't have been possible, for online diagnosis and restrictions. And I think there's a really big risk that actually we fall back once we get through the next period of time, this part of the pandemic, to the old ways of working. And I'm not talking about kind of being in the office, I'm talking about actually reverting back to not adopting that risk. So core to that is, I guess, building the structural pieces that make that happen and putting the focus on that. So my proposal, which I'm working with the next board, is actually putting data, technology and innovation at the centre of all the things that we do in those new ways of thinking, and building those core capabilities and specifications for chief scientific officers at the core of our civil service, and have that digital data and data capability as well. So there's part of that is actually delivering enhanced benefit of services to our citizens, but also it's to better inform policy development and using the data, archives and accesses that we have within the civil service to actually have better informed decisions. Another key aspect for me is actually how we use digital data to unlock opportunities externally in the market. So we have combined health and social care records and data sets available to that. Is there ways that we can innovate and we use that as being leaders within the Northern Ireland aspects that provides opportunities for our economy and for our SME base? And then the fourth piece is actually how do we make sure that the economy, that we're emboldening those opportunities where we can lead overall. That's a very wide scope, but where we need to start is actually building that core professionalism and expertise within the sector. So that's the piece that those first few roles, we've got the permanent sec piece under, but the next few roles is actually building those professional, technical, digital skills. And I think we need to be very mindful of not looking towards boiling the ocean and having some big strategy, wide-reaching for overall system-level digital transformation. I think we need to look at those areas and those discussions I'm having. What are the programmes we can deliver quickly, which build momentum in terms of doing and delivering that? Some of those areas, I think, look towards the cross-cutting area, particularly in economic inactivity, and how we bridge into that data set and piece to provide new opportunities for bridging services between those large cohorts that we have.
I'm glad you're looking at the building blocks, because actually in the course of our recommendations and earlier work, we actually had to recommend that issues such as verifying citizens' IDs should be a priority area, and probably very pleased that was accepted and the department that they had it in place, because without it, the high street voucher system, the COVID certification systems, that was a fundamental piece that needed to be there. But the other bit alongside this is how do you ensure that those who don't have that technological ability are not have a mechanism joining in as well, because certainly they have been experiencing problems. So how are you going to ensure there's a suitable backup system for others? And I guess it's very pertinent the comment Mr. Muir made about COVID, because it's brought everything into sharp focus. It's almost a lightning rod through our system of what we can make to work and what can't. And very mindful of the process we're going through as well. But part of that we talked about. So I've got looking at innovation, how we do that transformation piece. But how do we work on a partnership level? So we need to bring everyone with us. So in terms of the COVID piece, looking towards how we bring how we understand the views of all our citizens, and of course, it's the equality impact assessment, but actually working with those stakeholder groups, like the Commissioner for Children, Commissioner for Older People, and making sure that our solutions are accessible to them as well. So it's a critical piece, because we're here to serve all our citizens. So you can't just go from a digital-first perspective and not provide mechanisms that actually will enable those who don't have those digital kind of access. Very also mindful of the digital divide as well between children, and particularly during the pandemic, and how we can bridge those services. So, I don't have all the list of answers, but that unless we deliver this in an inclusive way, we will actually not be able to get the outcomes that we that our citizens deserve, but actually that will deliver that big transformation. So inclusivity is a really key part. Through COVID, we're obviously engaging at different sector groups and working with the sectors and those different stakeholder groups to understand how we can provide meaningful access through them, and not to leave them excluded from this through digital and technology. One of the areas that we investigated was the HR operating model, and we found that it was much too elongated, and there's a huge risk that the best candidates who may have started the process will have got jobs before they might get an offer of a job from the civil service. So I understand that there's a review of the HR operating model underway, and to complete it by March 22. Can you update us as to how it's progressing? And is there any indication as to changes that might result?
Yes, thank you. And the operating model is a key aspect, and we're going through the work programme for the next board. And Brett mentioned how we're identifying those key areas that we want to include, which of course is the major capital programmes and for ISNI and how that's developed. But also the operating model is fundamental, and I guess it's not just the HR operating model isn't some fundamental machine, it's actually how you get work done in your department. So in every discussion I've had with every kind of permanent sec, or in fact with ministers or various different levels in the service, I guess getting that operating model right to have those on a timely basis is really critical. So that will be a key aspect for the next board in terms of reviewing and input to that operating model. You're right, it's a fundamental review ongoing, and it is on schedule for March 22. Maybe bring Jill in just in terms of where the outline pieces of that process are in terms of delivering on that. Jill, if you're available.
Yeah, no, happy to. It's not being led by HR, obviously, because we're being reviewed, if you like. But I suppose HR, next HR, the model that it is at the minute was created about 4.5 years ago, and at that point, really we opened our doors, if you like, with a 16-17% reduction, but no actual change or transformation to policies, processes, or procedures, and then within those, within being that operating time frame, we saw COVID. And we saw EU exit planning. So significant challenges throughout that time, but it is absolutely timely that the model is looked at in terms of operations, if you like, and then the strategic organisational development. That is something that is being run, it's being led by the Central Government Transformation Team. It's in DOF, but as I said, not part of HR, but we are engaging very closely with the team that's leading on that. And as far as I'm aware, it is, as Jane said, on track to produce findings by March.
The area that seems to have caused particular concerns is where there are specialist skills that are required, whether it's commercial skills, whether it's perhaps engineering skills. One area of concern to me in terms of technical skills is our MOT centres, and it's come to light to myself that only about 1/3 of those who are successful in the application process actually turn up for the training programme. And in fact, on the first number of programmes, they haven't even recorded how many people were invited. They can only tell us the number that attended. So it does seem to be the last 2 programmes, only about 1/3 actually turned up. So in terms of commercial awareness, and they were recruited through the HR direct process. So in terms of commercial awareness, how does the system react to that, to review the terms and conditions? Because this is a priority area for the public who are really desperate to get their vehicles tested and back on the road. So how does the system to react when the current model is not working? How do you review what's wrong with the terms and conditions, what's wrong with why people are not turning up for training? How does the system deal with such instances?
Chair, I guess I'd be very open. I'm not over the detail of that specific scenario. I have actually visited the MOT centre in Downpatrick during my trips and actually see how they, I don't know what that is, the one in Downpatrick, but actually see the level of kind of commitment that team do, and I guess they were rolling out again upgrades in terms of technology and innovation, which had its issues. I imagine that Jill's probably not over the detail of that, but I'll give you my commitment to look at that and come back. Of course, there needs to be, if we're identifying that these commercial skills need to be provided, we're providing training for them, we're funding that, we need to make sure they're delivered, and there is, of course, an obligation in terms of having the competency to do that. So, I will.
The job specification was a fully trained mechanic with at least 3 years' experience. So they're not being attracted. So how is the system reacting? It does seem to see we're still operating with a very clunky model that is not reacting to the needs of the market.
Okay. With your...
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay.
the agreement, I'll come back on that one. Apologies, I don't have a response.
Could I just ask there, in terms of the answers you've given in the presentation you made at the very outset of the meeting, I'm encouraged by what I've heard, because in terms of culture, there was a critique of the civil service that was risk averse, and previous incarnations of this committee had ongoing reports around that. Under your leadership, will that risk aversion be something that will be signpost to the past?
Properly managing risk is fundamental to delivering any level of transformation. So, and I think reflecting, on what RHI and other analysis has done, there has been perhaps there is the potential that we could fall into a risk removal. So that stops you doing anything. So I came into this role because actually, and I thought that there wasn't a risk at all, but actually the service, which gave me so much comfort over the past 20 months, did very risky things because it had to. So the service did actually move to do things because it needed to do those for the people of Northern Ireland. So I am absolutely, my background's in venture capital, so I invested in risk-based decisions with big sums of money, some from pension funds, to actually give a return. That needs to be brought in a managed way into the service. So we can't go out and make whole-scale risk decisions. We need to have a risk appetite within the different environments we're working. There are some areas within the civil service which should tolerate a very, very small risk profile, but there are areas where we need to be actually embracing those areas for risk. And with that needs to come backing from myself that those will not always work out. And actually, to be honest, it needs to come with backing from the Audit Office and from this committee to say that if we're taking risks, the point of risks is you will fail in some of those areas.
Sure.
So, I find actually the committee meetings just so valuable to get your insights.
Okay, can I provide you some reassurance? Because this committee last year unanimously took a decision to suspend its work at the height of the lockdown because we felt it was not the best use of permanent secretaries' time, whether from health, communities, and whatever, to come to this committee and prepare to come to this committee when they were dealing with life and death situations. And the other thing is we postponed meetings for some permanent secretaries as well when we recommenced our work a few weeks later to facilitate that. So we absolutely hear what you're saying, and I would absolutely reiterate the point of others have made in relation to COVID, and whether it's the Department of Finance in terms of the distributions of monies around the subventions in COVID, or the Department of the Economy. And those are only examples I'm giving there. I'm sure it's widespread across the civil service, but we need to ensure that all departments, that level is there as well. In terms of, you mentioned you're not quite yet in post for 100 days.
I think it's maybe tomorrow.
All right.
Maybe tomorrow.
Right, okay, so you're 99 right. Come back to the accountability. You've heard other members talking about accountability. That is an issue which this committee is continually concerned about, and particularly the accountability at the top of the civil service, or the lack of. Do you think that not having, not your fault, because you applied for a job that you didn't set the specification for, do you think not having the powers of the head of the civil service in Scotland or Wales, for example, is disadvantageous to Northern Ireland PLC?
I give you a reflection, I guess, coming in, and I'm in a private sector background, so used to chief executive where you do have ultimately that accountability, and I thought, you look towards what are my hard levers and what are my soft levers, because I'm in a change agenda. What have I got here to flex with? And I guess coming in, that was a concern that I didn't. This isn't. It's a construction of legislative, and it's obviously very clearly defined. And we've got a five-party coalition, so obviously there's ministerial direction. The executive has its role. So I understood what I was coming into, but I wondered actually about the ability to make actually change and impact. But what I have found when I've come into it is actually the ability for the board, so there was no obligation for that board to come together and agree terms of reference. Those 4 areas identified, those were led by permanent sex, but on a cross-departmental level. So there is absolutely areas that we can do to bring those things together. I know I am accountable as a figurehead. So whether it's from an accounting officer responsibility or from an SRO responsibility, I am really clear that it is my role and my objective to lead this transformation, to be accountable as we deliver those. So whilst it may not be technically in terms of those aspects, and I'm a pragmatic, so I live in the world of what I can and possibly do, but I absolutely know that my role can be to lead and deliver those big transformative programmes, and I have been very heartened by the response I've got from my colleagues as I've come into that role, and from the response I've got from ministers and First Minister.
Obviously, as a Public Accounts Committee, we will continue to monitor that right across government in Northern Ireland. In terms of the Civil Service Board, which you've broadened and brought in expertise from outside, how's it working?
So the Civil Service Board, so I guess what we have agreed is the terms of reference. We have agreed the principles, we've agreed the areas of focus, we've agreed a work programme, which is just going through that, and we've agreed that we're going to appoint 2 non-exec directors, and we are looking towards what the skill sets are of those. It's our intent to go into January and go through that appointment, obviously through the open and transparent appointment process. I was really keen that I didn't go in my first month and say it's all worked out and this is what we're going to do and we're going to put in these number non-execs. I needed to immerse myself. I needed to visit committees. I needed to talk to ministers and understand that. To I guess not just, but I think the non-exec positions for this are really critically, strategically important. They're not just another non-exec from another list of things. They're actually core skill sets that we need to do in a targeted, these are the skills we need, as opposed to generic competition. So I haven't shortcutted that process. We are now at the end of the process of identifying these are the programme, these are the skill sets, and we will go into that. At the moment, I would say that my experience of the next board is it's what it needs now. We need to organise ourselves more in terms of a programme for work, and not have very clearly defined this is our 12-month work programme, and that's what we have agreed as the next board, that we will identify a fundamental work programme. That will include a number of different elements. It will include the delivery focus, which includes the aspects that we've talked about in terms of the investment strategy and where those key pieces come in. It would include very significant elements of the transformation agenda with next HR model, the review of that operating model and those key aspects. It will also include the process for performance management. So we've worked through this with engagement with our SCS colleagues. What are the critical things that we need the board to have on their radar? So the performance management of our SCS and how we build in those skills is a critical part of those. So we're defining our work programme now, and we're defining our, what non-execs we need to have around that as well. So I'm not in a position to tell you how that's going as yet. We've got the fundamental blocks. Did I think I would be in this position in 3 months' time? I'm ahead of kind of where I thought we would have in terms of that coalesce. Will there be challenges ahead? I am very, very sure there will be challenges ahead, and we won't have got it right at the start. But I'm really happy to come back to the committee.
So just to say, perhaps in 3 months' time, we might invite you back, because then you will have been 6 months into the job and whatever. In relation to working from home, was it working from home if you can, I think is the policy. And we had this discussion with permanent secretaries before, earlier in the COVID pandemic. I think experience of working from home, I've witnessed some excellent examples of people working from home, and I don't just mean the civil service here, others not so good. Working from home as a policy is fine if it's managed properly. Are you confident that civil service has been managing it and will manage it properly?
Working from home as a policy is a similar process to any performance management process. So I think if there are performers who are weaker in the office, they'll be weaker at home as well. So I guess in terms of the performance management process, we have to be comfortable that we're doing it, and I am very confident that we have those processes in place to do that. There will undoubtedly be learnings, going from an operating model where you're 100% in the office for any organisation to where we have a blended model. We're going to have to, you talk about innovation and risk and how we do this. We need to be really cycling back and not say we're going from this model to this model and not allow some time to feed that into the process. We've obviously had to do a very significant stakeholder engagement. Each department has looked towards what the optimum model is for those areas. I think there will be, which I think we spoke earlier in the week with our next colleagues in HR, that we need to be kind of mindful of the unintended consequences that may come out of changing a model when we go into long term, and I'm thinking that even the welfare for our employees as well. But for me, the fundamental piece where this kind of starts and ends is actually delivering the service for our customers. That's the test that we must level and measure. There is, as a consequence of doing that, if we can have a blended model, then there is an opportunity to have access to more diverse working models and operating models, which is a really positive thing. There's also an opportunity to look at our actual real estate base, and it looks towards it could be a model of around 60%, 40% utilisation in terms of those areas. I think there's an opportunity to look outside that central Belfast area and how we can improve more regional working. But I look outside in the private sector and the companies I was involved with. It's actually a significant opportunity for Northern Ireland, and the likes of those big tech companies, they have found their productivity levels have enhanced. They haven't found actually individuals, the companies have invested in Northern Ireland, but not actually used a model of actually having fixed real estate. So this is an area where there'll be dynamic and changing.
I think, I suppose, the separation of the private, and I don't need to tell you this as someone who worked in the private sector, when you have goals, targets, figures to meet, need is a great master. In terms of the...
I'll just say that the civil service should have goals and targets to meet as well. So I think that is where we need to be really clear on that delivery agenda about how this isn't strategy on a shelf. This is about delivery and how we up that momentum.
And finally then, from me, in terms of joined upness and cut across government, last week we had the Permanent Secretary from Education here, and the Chief Executive of the Education Authority. You'll be aware of First Start, a piece of work produced by Dr. Noel Purdy and his team. And we are currently doing a report on addiction services as well. And very recently we had the Chief Medical Officer and the Permanent Secretary from Health in front of this committee. On both of those issues, joined upness across government and the provision of budget, because early intervention being cheaper and more effective in terms of education and health and general well-being and mental wellness and so on, is crucial. I'm not going to ask you the question because you're only 30 days in, but it is vitally important going forward that the funding is made available on those issues so that we can actually, across government, share the responsibility that it's not just left with health to deal with an issue which is a societal problem, or it's not just left for education to deal with in terms of young people and education and general well-being and so on, that there is a joined upness across government. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and I maybe just reflect the joined upness across government. We talked about the areas which are cross-cutting and very significant, and I talked about one of them, which was green growth, getting to 48% emissions. Another part for me is the economy. We need to get to 12 billion GVA in 10 years, so we're in a break-even perspective, and then that's about new skills and new roles and getting our economic activity down from 27% to 22%, and how we actually bridge that, which requires an all-of-government approach. It requires communities, the benefits into the economy. Economy is full from a skills perspective, so we actually need to cycle into that. But the third of those areas was actually that those health inequalities, and you can't solve the problems of health in health. There's obviously problems in health, which will be solved in health. And on day 3 of my trip, I visited Maghaberry Prison, and 71% of the people in there left school between 14 and 16, and 90% had drug or alcohol addiction. So when our whole system fails, many of them, that's where they end up. And I was a volunteer childline counsellor for 6 years, and I was on the board of Young Enterprise, and those things about the youth are really fundamentally important to me. So One of the third intervention we're looking at is that early starts, how you get early interventions. We have 7 years life expectancy difference from where I was born in North Belfast to where I live now in kind of Malone Road, if you're a man. So those things are not right. They're not right from a social justice perspective, but they're not right from an economy perspective because they produce complex comorbidities and in health, which we pick up as well as part of that. But it needs to start in education and in communities and in all those other areas, and those will what deliver. So those, for me, if I'm choosing my 3 big things, it's about the economy and getting economic activity. It's about getting towards net zero carbon to 42% in the next 10 years, and it's about bridging that gap in those health inequalities, and those fundamentally require a joined up all-of-government approach. And I actually believe those things will engender within the service traction to get behind them, because those are our wicked problems, and you can't solve them in any one department. And those will be the things that I'm elevating and trying to look for funding, north, south, east, west, whoever will give it to me as well.
Okay.
So fundamentally agree on that.
Beggs.
Just on the subject of change again, I'm just curious how you can help empower civil servants to make changes to the system where it's obvious and do it on a timely basis. A year ago in here, we had a report on special educational needs, and I had highlighted the fact there can be up to 3 classroom assistants standing at the back of the classroom in post-primary school not actually doing anything. The senior rep from the EA agreed that this was not a good use of money. A board member said it was disgraceful, and he agreed entirely with me. The EA chief executive agreed, and a year later, I think they've just started to look at a pilot. Meanwhile, we've discovered that the boys' model has fought and got derogation from the scheme so that they can identify the priorities for their young people and address, and it's working. And I've discovered today a second post-primary school has managed to do the same. So how can we empower our civil servants, our officials, to ensure that we get good value for money and make a difference and do it on a timely basis?
So I can't comment specifically on that case, although I was supposed to visit the boys' model, which is just my old stomping ground as a child, but it was cancelled because of the COVID piece. But I mean, they're doing just such phenomenal work in there, changing lives very significantly. And I guess I can't be involved in the decisions, the operational decisions within the departments. But actually, for me, part of it is what is our mission, what is our big ambition for the civil service? Because if we can coalesce behind those things and see how everything joins together in order to do those aspects, and also to give freedom to actually empower those to do that. So I think, can I solve that individual problem? Well, I can obviously speak in a one-to-one basis and try to make that. Part of it is creating that culture where we are delivering a fundamental step change for the people of Northern Ireland, and these are the big things that we're going after. And I guess giving the brilliant civil service and getting some other people in to refresh that as well. I mean, these are good people wanting to deliver better things. You wouldn't, you don't sign up for this for any other reason. So actually elevating that proposition, focusing on a few things that actually we can really get behind, and putting the support and funding and shining the light on that. And in that, not making it about the 10 years, but actually making it about the first 3 months and the 6 months and the 9 months, and elevating all those pieces as well. So I don't have a specific, but I guess, and I think tone and focus is a really critical way, and I guess moving into allowing some risk taking as well, as part of that as well.
Okay, can I thank you very much, Dr. Brady? Dr. Brady MBE, I forgot to give you your full title. Can I recommend that you visit the boys' model? I declared interest as a former pupil, but I do think you should go. You will have heard from the committee collectively in terms of our concerns about accountability and joined-upness, that these are hugely important for governance in Northern Ireland going forward. It has been a refreshing perspective, and I thank you for it. We look forward to you coming back in 3 months' time. Before you do go, can I just ask you to take our thanks to the civil service, who throughout this pandemic have been stoic in terms of the work that many of them across departments have done in making real life-changing decisions and actions to protect our people, hugely important, and we thank them for it. If you would pass that on. And finally, just wishing you and Ms Min, Mr Pauly, Mr Hannam, all the very best and happy Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr Donnelly, I've omitted to say before Mr Brady leaves, have you any comments you want to make?
No, I think it's all been said, Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, you're free to go, folks. Thanks. Okay, members, with your permission then, we'll go into closed session to discuss the evidence session. And could I therefore just...
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Senate Chamber programme signed.